Around June, July of last year, I developed a jonesing for some tabletop role-playing games and discovered that my university had a club. Very convenient, I thought. I found their Discord server listed on their Facebook group and thought that that would be a good way to get my foot in the door and introduce myself. "How's everyone going?" I asked in my first post. Big mistake. Apparently, what followed was an erratic diatribe from a couple of members about how impersonal and generic that greeting was. I thought they were making a joke that I didn't really get at first, so I played along, but as I struggled to change the subject, the criticisms became weirdly pointed and aggressive. I had uncorked a massive rant about the insecurity of social norms and how I must clearly have nothing more substantive to say. Since I'm not in the habit of apologizing for observing basic politeness, I instead just tried to get on the subject of maybe joining a game. This would prove futile, and I left without another word. Dodged a bullet, I'd say. I found a campaign off campus that I've been enjoying for 9 months now, and no one gets mad or stroppy when I say hello to them. The slight inconvenience of having to travel is worth that, in my opinion. This reminds me of a Tinder screenshot that Cody and Kelsey joked about on the Cody Co YouTube channel, basically verbatim. I wonder if this is a thing, people freaking out the slightest hint of social norms. Look, I'm a guy who says farewell, like, a lot in my day-to-day life, and even I've gotta say, of all the social norms you're gonna hate, hello is a pretty silly one to pick out. The DM of the story is a friend of a friend. They were looking for a final player to round the game out, so my friend invited me, knowing I've been looking for a homebrew game to join. I'm a forever DM, so I pretty much take any game. The game was pitched as a completely open sandbox, unlike other games I've played in. His plan was to build the world around the characters, not the other way around. I was intrigued by this strategy, although I had a few misgivings. Session 0 rolls around, and it really is simply whatever we want to do. The only piece of world building we are given is that everyone hates elves with a passion, high elves especially. I was planning on playing a wood elf, so I asked the DM why, and the DM responded with, "You don't want to know, wink wink," you know, that kind of answer. He then says what the high elves did was a mystery that we'll have to solve within the game. I'm cool with that, but also point out that people must have a reason for hating them, and that if it's a mystery no one knows about, then why do people hate the High Elves? Even a bogus reason would be okay, but a reason would be nice to know, but nope, he doesn't want to tell us. I talked to my friend about it, and we kind of come to the conclusion that he doesn't have any plot yet, and that's why he's not telling us anything. We kind of signed up for that, so sure, whatever. We were sure we'd find out more later, and I rolled up my little elf character. Session 1, we're apparently boarding a boat. Cool, we hadn't planned for that, but sure, roll with the punches. Where do we board the boat? No idea. What's the boat's name? No clue. Where is the boat going, or why is it going there? Doesn't matter. We're on a boat, and we're now being attacked by a kraken at level 3, before we even get to speak to any of the NPCs other than the captain. We inevitably lose that fight, and the boat sinks, leaving us as the only survivors on a beach. My character stands up, and she sees sand and the ocean. There's some wreckage on the beach, but nothing to write home about. We open all the crates within 5 minutes and find some carrots. Then we look around and see sand as far as the eye can see. We walk around for a bit and see some rocks. Thinking it might be an oasis or something, we head for the rocks, and they're just rocks. We look for something else, and we see sand. We have a ranger in the party, so they try and use their survival skills to pick a direction for us. We end up wandering north, east, and for the next 2 sessions, all we can see is sand. I could sort of see the setup working as a survival game, except we have good berry and create water, enough wood to make campfires for a while, and one of the players even picked up a tent. So food, shelter, and water are all taken care of. The players are cool people, so we've managed some fun roleplay, but we're starting to run out of things to talk about. After the session, I pull the DM aside and tell him he's not giving us much to work with. He tells me he's given us a whole world to shape as we see fit. I tell him I like his group, but I need to do something other than look at sand. He promises me the next session will be more interesting. Next session, and drumroll please, we find 2 trees. They're not magical, their water source is underground and inaccessible, and they have no coconuts on them, but we might be getting close to the edge of the beach. Out of character, the DM says it should only be 2 more sessions of desert, and I tell him I won't be around to see it. Well, that's at first the DM who created a literal sandbox, and while I'm glad that I at least got some humor out of it, yeah, this would definitely suck. We've seen, maybe not to this extreme of a degree, but we have seen this. DMs who don't like prepping, who don't like giving their party anything to work with. Look, sandbox games are awesome. It's a valid way to play. However, you still need to do stuff. You still need to prep. You can't just sit on your bum and wait for your party to do all the work for you. You still need to have encounters, NPCs, locations, etc., just like in a linear style game. I don't know if this DM was just being lazy or coy. At this point, it doesn't matter. The DM lost their party because they weren't giving them anything to work with, and frankly, it's deserved. Even in a sandbox game, you need to have something. It's just the something needs to be more than 2 trees. This just happened a few hours ago, so it's fresh, and I'm still really biffed about it. I've been part of a player-driven mystery campaign surrounding a secret Illuminati-like society that identified themselves by carrying letters and black envelopes around. All of our characters were supposed to be people that are eligible members of the society. Important people are as follows. Names are, of course, altered. There's me, there's the DM, there's Randy, a close friend of the DM's, and Fella. Not sure how much I'll bring him up, but he's worth mentioning here just in case. The campaign started with an almost entirely different group of 5 players, the only recurring individuals being myself and Randy. During this time, Randy's character got taken out of action temporarily, so he brought in a guest character until such a time as his primary character could be restored. It was also during this time that the other 3 party members began slowly dropping out for various reasons until it was just Randy and I. Fella would join the campaign later, after a few admittedly wonderful sessions of just Randy and myself. Seriously though, Randy was a great role player. Eventually, his previous character was restored by sacrificing his backup in some sort of ritual. Fella would later invite a friend of his, and there was some kind of in-character friction between Randy's character and this new party member that caused Randy's character to outright leave the party. Randy would come back the next week with a new character, a sentient fragment of a long-forgotten tragedy god. The idea being that he was playing as a BBEG. Around this time, the DM started introducing more and more plot threads as the party kept investigating. This led to a lot of information being gathered, but we progressively became more and more lost in all the different plot threads. This problem was exacerbated by my character being the only remaining legacy party member, forcing me into leadership and decision-making roles that I wasn't prepared for because not only did I lack the answers, but the choice paralysis whenever people looked to me for what we should be doing made it hard to figure out where to look for the path forward, despite my fairly diligent note-taking. Eventually, Randy would reveal how evil his current character actually was, even openly inviting us to just kill him? Seeing no reason as to why I shouldn't, I took them up on their invitation and quote-unquote killed them, quotation marks there, because the character dramatically feigned death and teleported away, never to be seen again. Randy would later take control of an NPC for a session, and this NPC would quickly evolve into a 4th character. I hope you're noticing a pattern here. It was around this time we were wrapping up my character's personal goal. It was awesome. I really enjoyed it. This character later disappeared to make room for the 5th character Randy was planning. Some eccentric, rich superhero type guy. I figured this character would be really fun to have around until circumstances arose during this character's 2nd session that got him trapped in some kind of spiritual elf limbo. We laughed it off, and Randy would come back a week or 2 later with his 6th but final character. This character was, from what I understand, a transplant from another campaign and was very far removed from any of the plot threads that currently existed. Plot threads we were still struggling to untangle. Rather, this character attempted to introduce yet more plot threads relating to themselves. Now, this character was just kind of a mysterious stranger to the rest of us, who were in some way affiliated with a secret Illuminati-like society mentioned at the start of the story. But not this new character. We, the players, had to contrive some reason to bring them along. They kept prying into what we were doing, and we couldn't tell them because we were doing stuff for this fancy Illuminati. We only knew this character for roughly 24 hours, and we had no indication that she was also affiliated with them, so we simply told her that what we're doing is on a need-to-know basis. Earlier in tonight's session, I tried helping them to do some research for their own personal goal, something that required underwater travel. When this character looked to me to figure out what to do next, I simply said, I don't know, because I didn't know anything about underwater travel in this setting the DM had created. This prompted Randy's character to just say, hey, I'm gonna go then, and I really didn't see any reason to stop them. Like, I would have assumed they wanted to go look for whatever means of underwater travel existed, if at all, but it turns out Randy was once again having a character just leave the party? This was followed by Randy venting his frustrations to us, blaming us for not accommodating his character in the party when they were completely uninvolved with everything that has been going on throughout the campaign and just introduced more stuff. He practically got on our cases about not telling this character what the party was up to despite, as described above, we had no reason to. We couldn't trust this character because we hardly knew them, and they weren't affiliated with the secret society, so we were, kind of obligated to keep our mouths shut. Randy then hit us with the classic, it's what my character would do, when talking about why all his characters kept doing things that got them removed from the party, even though the rest of the party not immediately spilling everything to this new character was also a matter of what our characters would do when faced with an unaffiliated third party trying to get involved. In hindsight, I legit don't know why he didn't just make a character that had actual connections to the plot, because our problem with trying to get anything done was coming to a head at this point. Being quite frustrated ourselves, Fella and I brought up the sweater's worth of plot threads and how we didn't know how to follow any of them because they all seemed to stop at dead ends. I mentioned how I didn't like being the decision maker of the party, and Fella mentioned how unfair it was to put me in a position where I was technically the only party member who had been around since day one, and was therefore the only person people could look to for answers. The DM then stepped in and started calmly helping me, and Fella to go over our information to help us understand the plot threads a little more, which I appreciated a lot. Randy kept interjecting, however, still mad about his character, and that frustrated Fella and I all over again. Randy then declared he was leaving the campaign, and the DM implied that the campaign is probably not going to continue for long afterwards. They both left the voice call, and Randy left the campaign server outright. It really frustrates me because I was otherwise having fun with the campaign. I enjoyed the world the DM had crafted. I love the roleplay. It was all fun until I couldn't keep up with my newfound responsibilities as party leader, and Randy's new characters continued to be more and more disconnected from the campaign as a whole. I feel like this could have been easily avoided if the DM had put some rails on the game and made sure Randy's characters had more to do with the plot threads we were already trying to follow, but I can't really say that for certain. Might just be me huffing copium, really. Looks like we got our theme this episode, Sandbox games. Now, just like how linear games can fall into being railroaded messes where the player characters can make no decisions and nothing really matters, you can also find yourself in a sandbox that is far, far, far too open, where you have a dozen different threads but no direction on what to do, where the characters and, more importantly, the players have no idea who's who and what's where, and that's a pretty bad situation to get in. That is primarily the DM's responsibility. That whole bit where the DM helps the players to sort out the whole story of the campaign, that should have happened way sooner. I've had this problem myself. Even though I frame my games as rather linear, I'm mostly talking about my stream games that you can watch on this channel. My home game, I'm realizing now, can actually be pretty open and sandbox-like, but I ran into this exact problem where my players, and as a DM, it was my responsibility to clear the air. I'm glad the DM did that eventually, but it should have happened much sooner. But on top of that, Randy is not helping at all. Randy's making it worse by introducing new plot threads with these characters that have nothing to do with the campaign. I don't want to imply it's good for heavily restricting character creation. That's not good, but there is a balance. You can work with a DM to create a character that both works in the campaign and fulfills your own creative desires. Both are possible. There is a middle ground, and I think there are definitely groups out there that need to get better at finding it. Alright, I remembered another horror story, which actually was my first ever experience with tabletop role-playing games, and I'm glad it didn't sour me away from ever participating in them again, as I am now an avid player. So the story goes back a good more than 2 decades, I feel like. It was either right as 3.5 came out, or was still 3rd edition. Anyway, effectively, a friend invited me to try out D&D with a group of people he played with. Now, being as this was when I was young, and I was a very cringy weeb, I decided I wanted to play an angel. Basically, or a celestial in this case. I rolled up a celestial ranger, and when I asked about alignment, the DM went, all celestials are lawful good, so you have to be lawful good. And I was like, okay, sure. So, cue the start of the game. One of our first encounters is against a group of werewolves, which we defeat. The party goes to loot the bodies, and I go to join in, to which the DM goes, no, a lawful good character would not loot the bodies. In fact, you chide the other characters for being so disrespectful and insist on a proper burial for the deceased. Okay. Later on, we got another quest and got into a fight. I feel like the first fight, they didn't pull this because I was still trying to figure out things and how range attacks work, etc. But anyway, in this second fight, I forgot what it was against. It was zombies, I think. The zombies started to go towards one of the other squishies. Keep in mind, as a ranger, I wasn't exactly not squishy myself. I think it was a wizard. Anyway, I go to shoot one of the zombies approaching it, and the DM goes, no, that is not what a lawful good character would do. You rush in between the wizard and the zombies and throw yourself into them to protect your ally. So my character nearly died in this encounter as a result, and frankly, I would have probably been thankful if they had, because at this point, I was not having fun with the game. I was told by my best friend, the one playing the chaotic neutral wizard blaster caster, who got to blow things up and do whatever he wants. Anyway, I thought that might be more fun. We turn the quest, and the quest giver goes to give out the rewards, something like 100 gold each. Oh cool, I can finally buy some arrows, and here we go, cue the DM. No, that is not what a lawful good character would do. You immediately turn around and hand all of your gold back to the quest giver and tell them to donate it to a church or an orphanage. That is what a lawful good character does. Look guys, being a good person does not mean you need to suffer all the time. You can still be happy and do good things. Just because you get something out of it doesn't make you bad. Actually, who am I kidding? This is no place for a moral discussion. Anyway, the session came to an end shortly after, to which the DM had the audacity to ask if I had fun. To which I just shrugged and deferred to my friend, as I was already kind of an introverted individual and all. I wanted to just say, well, I didn't exactly get to play. You told me everything my character would do and wouldn't do, though I did end up asking. So my friend's character gets to do whatever they want. Why is that? Oh yeah, they're chaotic neutral. That alignment can do good if they want to, but doesn't have to, as it isn't bound by their alignment. I see. So in other words, if I want to have any agency ever, play chaotic neutral only. Okay. Got it. TLDR. DM forces lawful good alignment on my character and then basically controls my character, and so I decide that then and there I will never play anything that isn't chaotic neutral ever again, so I can have agency to do whatever I want, whether those actions are good or not. We're going to ignore the DM's very strange perspective on what is a good action because, you know, we just did that midway through the story. But let's talk about alignment. I think alignment is a fine system. I don't hate it. I see it kind of like star signs or Hogwarts houses. You know, it's just a way to sort characters because we like sorting things. However, when people take it too seriously, it causes way more trouble than it's ever worth. I always see this as just a way to vaguely describe how a character acts when they're trying to to make decisions. That's it. It is not the holy text. This is not the way. It is simply just a guiding principle. However, this DM's stingy view of lawful good is not something that is entirely unheard of. I've seen this before, and in fact, I think lawful good is the alignment that I often see get misused the most to control characters, or used by characters to excuse stupid actions. And yeah, it's annoying. Stop it. Alignments are more guidelines, not actual rules. Hey folks, a little context before we begin. This is a story from the same campaign of this debacle, but this isn't necessary for reading this post. Before we jump in, I would like to amend a small part of that prior posting. At the time, I and the other players were still a part of that campaign, and in case he ever found the post, I didn't want to come off as too harsh. However, since then, the campaign ended in a rather sudden fashion. So, to amend, as players, we did not enjoy that game much, and players from the DM's other games had expressed some similar issues to the ones we were facing. Right, on to his other games. He ran all of those games in one server, allowing the parties to interact outside of the game. This is info for later, so without further ado, let's jump in. We were never the heroes of this game. We were stated to be out of character, and the endless onslaughts of world-ending threats that were piling up on our plate would certainly lead one to believe that we were meant to save the world. However, we quickly discovered that this would never come to fruition. Why? In 40 sessions, we hadn't killed a single NPC with a name. Random monsters? Sure. However, whenever anything had a name or true planning behind it, it was untouchable. This, of course, included any enemies we were meant to defeat as part of the plot. Even their unimportant henchmen were untouchable for the most part. The DM had a self-insert NPC in all 3 games, a teleporting gun-slinging charmer that could evade any sort of divination and was capable of teleporting in anywhere he wanted in the world. Cast a spell on him? Doesn't work. Attack him? You singed his leg hairs. Wherever we went in the world, he was there, scouting an abandoned crime boss's base. He sat there in the dark in the basement, sneaking through town to try and get out. He's in an alleyway and calls out to us. Fighting a goblin horde attacking a town. He's on a roof staring at us, using detect magic on the wilderness. Gun guy is now behind my character, gun to the back of his head. He wasn't an NPC particularly connected to us, as he appeared in all of the DM's games. He just liked having an in-world presence. An enemy group that the DM had entirely copied from an online sourcebook, not the worst thing, but he pretended it was his original creation, that opposed us would always conveniently escape. We see one walking around, we start to try to run after them, they never run away, but the distance between us doesn't close until they slip into a building or a sewer, and then they entirely vanish. A man that attempted to blackmail us with the life of a party member's sister, so we attempted to sneak after him. High stealth rolls, invisibility, the works. As we followed him, doors began to swing open all throughout the buildings as an innumerable number of armed guards appeared. This, of course, was after we had scouted with a good number of checks and assured this man was alone. A changeling had taken the guise of the tavern keeper, a fact we figured out. Somehow, he knew that we knew, so he began to flee. He cast the sleep spell and rolls around a 40. That's enough to take down the sorcerer, but no one else with the residual hit points. He claims that this is a special sleep spell, and the 40 would target all of us. Only 2 of us are still standing as we were outside of the spell's range, but this individual powered through all of our spells and ran 90 plus feet in a turn and simply disappeared. His ally, however, remained T-posing in the room without attacking us or fleeing. The DM narrated this and asked me, "Would you like to catch him?" In response, I used a spell that would bind him. Of course, after the NPC we wanted to catch escaped with a 17 plus in every roll, this random guy, gets a natural 1. We captured this man and attempted to interrogate him for information, which of course garnered us nothing. I don't mind if the DM wants certain NPCs to keep kicking for the plot, but over almost a year of games, we hadn't been allowed to defeat a single thing that wasn't a simple copy-pasted stat block from D&D Beyond with no name or care as to what the creature actually was besides an enemy. However, we thought our luck was changing. The DM had promised us that we would be leaving the city next session, as he had kept us there for the better part of 5 months without allowing us to really do anything. Next session rolls around, of course, and another plot hook inside the city landed on our laps. However, we didn't mind, as it meant we have a good chance of progressing in some kind of plotline. A crime syndicate's leader is attempting to become God, a harsh task for a level 6 group, but we are ready to chew into an actually planned antagonist and finally get our win! We didn't win, and it wasn't even close. Our characters received a vision from the aptly titled God of Visions. He told us that the syndicate leader would be attacking the king's brother during an important speech, or rather, we saw him doing it. Amazing! We know exactly when that will be, in about a week of in-game time. So, we spend around 2 real-life months, or 8 sessions, in preparation for fighting him. We gather allies. We interrupt the flow of these drugs that his people were intent on using to turn themselves into mindless berserkers. And then, the day of the speech arrives, and the crime leader doesn't turn up. Neither do our allies, in fact. Instead, a hastily made rogue appears and attempts to attack the king's brother and was very swiftly dealt with by our group alone. We tried to capture him alive for information, but he managed to off himself because he would never betray the syndicate. And that was the last straw for us, as we had wasted months, real life months, of prep time using information from a deity, and he changed it at the last moment while claiming, "I never said he would be there," which the vision had literally shown, given all 6 of us had made a note of it at the time. The 6 of us players privately have a discussion about things and find that we all had similar feelings on how things have been going. The named NPCs weren't the only problem. The DM refused to kill any of us either. If we failed our death saves, NPCs would come in and heal us at the last moment, even if they weren't present in the scene. He would lie about roles quite frequently, a fact that came up since he would always refuse to show the rolls after his NPCs with supposedly low wisdom succeeded on the 6th save in a row, and enemies would constantly get 25 plus to initiative despite not actually being dexterous. These roles were, of course, never revealed either. He would change our characters' backstories on the fly. I was told that my character had attended a magic academy for years, which wasn't a part of the story. Another character remembered details of their life from when they were a few months old that changed their entire direction of the backstory. Another player, in the end, changed their character out entirely because the DM had ruined the first beyond recognition. Other assorted issues came up as well, and we decided it would be best to speak with him. So I write up this message and receive this response. So, I don't want this to come out of nowhere tomorrow. Black Redacted and I had a chat post-session, and we've got some issues we'd like to bring up. Not with the new players, they're great, we love them. It's some story issues we've been talking about for a few months that figured it's best to talk about now rather than continue to sit on it. We do really like the game, and we want it to go well, so everything's done under the lens of trying to solve the issues, so we're all having a good time. As a DM myself, I know how hard it can be by the whole thing, so I just wanted to give the heads up before we compile our thoughts tomorrow.
To be honest, I'd hold off on that. I'm 95% sure it won't be necessary.
From here, the DM ghosted us all for 3 days. At that time, 2 players, including myself, decide to bow out of the campaign. Before doing so, we write up farewells to the players in his other campaigns in our shared chat before exiting the server. We have become friends with quite a few of them during our story, playing games and one-shot PvP battle royales organized by us players between the groups. Not 5 minutes later, he has banned everyone from our group from the server and deleted our farewell messages. While this was a disaster of a game, it allowed us folks to meet one another and become friends. So I'm glad it happened, even if the actual game fell through. The 6 of us players, including those that had only joined a few sessions prior, decided to stay together and began planning a new campaign together. Well, good to know that this at least brought some people together. I see that a lot. Horror stories bringing people together is good to see, though of course, I'd rather people get together over more pleasant circumstances. We went from 2 rough sandboxes to a rough railroad with a Western Cowboy DMPC, which, as a guy who loves cowboys and Dungeons & Dragons, yeah, this isn't it. This isn't it at all. We don't need to go over the problems with DMPCs. We've done that plenty of times as is, but we'll leave it here. DMPCs are bad, but this level of railroading is worse. The players here can't even lose without the DM's permission, and that sucks. Look, decisions are part of D&D. Being able to lose, to win, to triumph, to get that hell yeah moment it's dependent on the possibility of losing being there. And without that possibility, all those moments are hollow. They're empty. And that's exactly how I describe this game. It's empty. It's pointless. It's meaningless. There's no triumph. There's no loss. There's no nothing. And that really sucks. And that's it for today's episode of RPG Horror Stories. If you guys enjoyed, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Q and Play series, where I answer your questions in a rambling, unscripted format while also playing some video games. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment mArY Sue Gunslinger to let me know you made it to the end of the video. And hey, by the way, if you want to submit your own stories, email in the description where you can send them directly to me to get a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But anyway, whether you have a story or not, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.